Welcome to the Low Production, High Value Show with your host, Andrew Jenkins. On the show, we'll be exploring the world of entrepreneurship, social media, and the growing digital landscape. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, you know that the world of business is constantly evolving and changing. And in today's digital age, it is more important than ever to understand how social media and technology are affecting the way we do business. That's why on this show, we'll be talking to entrepreneurs and experts who have a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with you. From the latest trends and technologies to the struggles and triumphs of running a business, we'll be covering it all. So if you're looking to level up your entrepreneurial game and become more digitally savvy, then let's get started with the Low Production, High Value Show.
Welcome to the latest episode, and today's guest is Amy Woods from Content 10X. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, coincidentally, we have similar backgrounds. We both moved from management consulting into content marketing in the digital space. I was curious to hear how you made that shift from management consulting to founding and running Content 10X.
It's not really a very kind of linear path, is it? Management consulting to content repurposing. I guess the trying to say long story short, I'll try to keep it short. So when I first graduated from, kind of university business school and was looking at career, I was very keen on like running my own business. Like I wanted to eventually have my own business, but I had no idea in what or what I would do. Obviously, like fairly new to the world of work. So I got a graduate job at Accenture, and it was very much a 2 to 3 year plan to learn lots about business in a pretty intense environment, and then see if I could take that somewhere else and do something for myself. But 2 to 3 years became 13, I think it was, years in the end. So I stayed there for a while, and no complaints about it either. I stayed because I enjoyed it. It was a really good career, really interesting, kind of fast paced, working with the biggest and most successful companies in the world. And my specialization ended up being in the areas of change management. So like large scale transformation programs, outsourcing, big IT projects, things like that. And I ended up just, kind of changing life in terms of having children and all of that. And suddenly the career that I had that required me to travel constantly away Monday to Friday every single week isn't so conducive with having children and being a parent anymore. So my time as a management consultant, it felt like it, I couldn't be the best management consultant I could be and the best parent I could be when one requires me to be away from home every single night of the week. So it definitely then felt like, let's explore something new, let's try something different. And I was really interested in the world of online business. That was something that I thought if I could set up a business that was online, then, I could run it from anywhere and be more to my own sort of schedule and things like that. So I immersed myself in the world of people like Gary Vaynerchuk and Pat Flynn and Amy Porterfield and all the people that were talking about online businesses and things like that. And I initially was providing business consultancy type support to smaller businesses, something new that I tried online. And I set up a mastermind and I developed a course and things like that. But my passion wasn't really in that. And at the same time, whilst I'm learning all about online businesses and online branding and things like and content marketing, I realized how important it was to try and make content for myself and become known online. And I think the management consultant side of me, very into kind of developing systems, developing processes, building efficiency, things like that. I loved content. I loved the idea of creating big pillar pieces of content that then fuel this engine of content that can come, that you can develop for other platforms and things like that. So I had my content that I was creating, and then I had a writer that was helping me turn videos into blog posts, and I had a designer who was helping to design things like social graphics and things like that. So I had like a mini team of freelancers, I guess, that were supporting me. And that's when I came up with the business idea of, wouldn't this be a great proposition to offer businesses, where we say, focus on creating big pillar pieces of content. And then instead of juggling the team of freelancers, writers, designers, podcast producers, things like that, you just have this one company that take that piece of content, and then they hire all the different experts to do all of the different things, and then provide you with all the great content, and even further, distribute and publish it across platforms for you. So the leap was more, it kind of I kind of started developing something based on what I knew, and then spotted, I guess it's just a classic spot a problem and try and build a solution for it, isn't it? Really, I spotted people creating lots of content and then not knowing what to post on social and things like that, and I thought, I have a solution to this. And then fast forward 7 years forward, because we're almost approaching our 7th birthday, and it's morphed into a very specific B2B content repurposing agency.
Well, congratulations on the journey. Similar to you, taking I'll call it the management consulting approach to digital, advising, making strategic recommendations, etc. I'm wondering if you found how we evolved similar to you. I think we discovered an unmet need, which was people were doing a poor job of execution. Because it wasn't their core skill set, etc. That I don't mean to denigrate it respectfully. They were focused on their core business, and now they're trying to become socially literate. But what was that shift like for convincing people to move, like basically to outsource or to hand off some of the execution? Was it an easy ask, or did some require more convincing than others?
To be honest, not really in terms of the convincing, because I think whenever I explain the proposition and the offering to people, they're usually more just completely, kind of salivate at the thought of somebody just give we do this and then
Oh, you'll do it
you
for
do
me?
that. Yeah. So the proposition, what I would say is that we've gone through various kind of, I suppose, evolutions of the business. So when I first started Content 10X, I was working and was serving smaller business owners. So I initially got the first set of clients really through being in communities with people who, as I said, I was somebody looking to start an online business, and I joined communities with smaller business owners, whether they had maybe a small team of 10 or so people, up to just them and a VA, or just them, so like solo business owners. So really time strapped, like experts who have expertise that are selling their expertise, but quite time strapped in small teams. And so it wasn't too challenging to sell to them, because the proposition was so strong, and it was a really like beneficial offering. But it just depend on whether they had the budget, and whether they valued like investing in content and content repurposing versus other things that they could invest in. But I guess as we've started to work with bigger businesses, and we tend to work with like larger organizations now, and we've developed the offering more, and the team's got bigger and things like that. I know what you mean in terms of some pushback, because it's just the classic agency thing, isn't it? Are you sure that you can really understand what the best parts of this interview are? Because you don't know our audience, and you don't know what is important to us. Are you going to get the
How
branding
could you ever
right?
have our voice?
Exactly. Yeah. How could you write in our voice? And we have such a unique brand that how could you emulate that? But that must be what every agency gets, really. And I mentioned to you that end to end, what we do is we'll create all of the content, and we'll take care of the decision making process. So the clients don't have to be trawling through a video to tell us the magic moments and the best quotes, because we'll do the decisions and all of that. And then also ultimately schedule the content to an agreed timeline and everything, but we'll schedule that out on your social and your website and etc. And I think the two concerns would be around tone, branding, managing to get that completely right, and then also the distribution with the bigger companies. Often, it's just create the assets for us and write the copy for us, but we will handle pushing the button of distribution on LinkedIn or on our website and things like that. But yeah, there's not usually much kind of objection, so to speak, when it comes to the proposition.
Well, it's funny when you say, like, because we've shared the same experience of, how will you ever get our voice? And some, I don't want to sound snarky, but I kind of say, one or more people within your company are writing for your voice. Before you hired them, they were external parties.
Yeah.
So like they're infusing it with their own thinking to a degree and so on. So I forgive me, but I don't think you can argue that they are so different from us as an external service provider. And exactly. I know that sounds self-serving, but it's like, but as well, like, we're going to interview all of the stakeholders that you want, and you will have the opportunity to say, and provide feedback about tone, and how you want to be perceived, etc. Which leads me to a question: when you're on an engagement, are there certain buckets of content or categories that are similar across all organizations that you've worked with? I recognize there's going to be some tailored specific to them, but there's, I'll call it thought leadership or educational content. Maybe there's an element of promotional. Talk to me a little bit about how, that approach and to categories or buckets of content.
Do you mean the kind of content that we work with, the kind of content
Right.
that
Well,
we
and
repurpose?
I know, like Gary Vee will talk about, you earn the right to produce promotional content, but you should be helpful and informative first as a priority. And that's really sort of the basis for the question. Like, how do you help your clients to be less salesy with their content, and more of a provision of a resource through their
Yeah, I
content?
mean, there's different types of content that we repurpose and work with actually. So, there's the thought leadership content. So things like solo, talking talking head, like people talking to camera and sharing tips and advice and things like that. And then they may do internal interviews. So it might be the head of marketing and the head of brand or something having conversations and things like that, and turning that into podcasts and video content and social content. It might be interviews with experts within their industry anyway, so it's again thought leadership content, although arguably that's shining more of the light on the lead thought leadership of the guest as opposed to the brand themselves. But
But
interesting,
that could be from the
insightful.
broader industry, as you said.
Exactly, yeah, but interesting and insightful industry experts talking to each other. So there's that kind of content. So that kind of written content. So you are right, really thinking about your audience and the value, and it's more experts talking to experts, whether they're internal or external. But we also work with written content. So in that case, it's where they've maybe commissioned some independent research or completed research themselves, where we have these 50-page white papers or research reports and things like that are really, really useful, but then not everybody wants to sit down and read a 50-page report. So the challenge to us will be, could you extract lots of interesting insights and value from this fairly dry 50-page report and turn it into interesting, more bite-sized, valuable content that we can be sharing onto our social and shorter blog posts and articles and all that kind of content. So I suppose we do, to your question, we do tend to deal more with that kind of thought leadership, insights, industry content, whether it's experts being interviewed, podcast episodes, that kind of thing, through to research papers, white papers, blog posts, things like that. We don't tend to deal much with the, like, say, promotional videos and that kind of promotional content. I think our proposition is more that we work with thought leadership, like value led
The more
content.
substantive content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, given your background in change management, I, I'm wondering if you agree or disagree, or what your take is on this. Because I've talked to people, especially if I'm giving a presentation to a group and there's representative of larger enterprises who would appreciate the situation. I have said to them, and in the course that I teach at the university, an often overlooked aspect of digital marketing or social or content is culture, and that sometimes it can feel like change is being thrust upon them to adopt these new behaviors, new thinking, to evolve their marketing and communications efforts, and enterprises can be resistant to that. I'm just wondering, one, does that resonate with you, and two, have you seen that in your own work with as you've moved to larger firms in terms of service provision?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a huge thing, and I think that, some of the problems that I've seen is where the change is moving at quite a fast rate, and it's where it's not being maybe introduced that well to the workforce. I always think that, what you have to do when you're trying to introduce change and sort of move the culture of the organization forward with the changes, that you have to bring things in such a way that it's not so much that the change has been forced upon you, but it just becomes a state that the old way is no longer viable anymore, because these new ways have been, like, kind of, in the world of, like, say, AI within marketing and content marketing, things like that. I think that where the organizations are almost trying to say, let's just embrace it, let's use it, you over there, like, from now on I want you to be using ChatGPT, etc., things like that. It's not the way that you bring about a culture change of a team that now embrace AI and understand AI. You actually just make people feel a bit fearful for their jobs and a bit unsure of what they're supposed to be doing. Whereas I think if you start to educate and introduce things gradually and help the teams come up with ideas themselves for how that change will come about, then all of a sudden you realize that thing that you used to do 3 months ago doesn't seem so appealing anymore, and it just happens a bit more gradually and a bit more naturally because the change has come about. But yeah, I mean, it is just a huge things in terms of, you can slap change on people, can't you? But you can't just change the culture. The culture is a set of beliefs and values and the way people, like, operate and think, and the decisions that people make on a daily basis, and that just doesn't come through telling people to do things differently. And I definitely see that some of the, well, like with some of the clients that we work with as well, there's been massive changes in the marketing functions and in the way that things are structured and the way that they operate in the last few years or so. And there's been downsizing as well. In most of our companies that we work with are in, like, the B2B tech space in the US. So there's just been so much change, and you feel the almost pain with some of the heads of marketing that you speak to at the moment, that the change has been quite
They're
fast and
having
the
to do
culture
more
hasn't
with
changed.
less, right? Which is why
Exactly.
they look to someone like you.
I think that's the thing. I think that, like, it's funny because I say, like, do more with less quite a lot. Like, I think in 2023 we had a bit of a mantra that our thing was to do more with less and to work with the people that we work with, but also just educate our audience through our free content, that whole mantra of doing more with less and what we mean by that. But it's funny, isn't it? Because I can just imagine all the eyes rolling and the, like, oh yeah, when teams are told to do with more with less, what you basically mean is that you're going to remove half the people and expect us to deliver 10 times more. And that's a really annoying phrase, do more with less. That's just a divisive way of saying that we're going to, like, squeeze
Yeah.
more out of you all. But
Doesn't win a lot of favor.
exactly, yeah. But in the world of, in the world of content, what we're trying to say, if people can embrace it, is that, you know, how you used to try and do like two really big webinars a month, and that's lots of work and all of that. Well, what we're trying to say is, why don't you think about doing one webinar every 2 months? But we'll create, you know, we'll do more with the run up to it. We'll have a much more higher quality webinar when we run it, and we'll get a lot more quality content from it as well. So you're like doing a lot more with less webinars than trying to do to just like do loads of webinars. And you know, that's what we're trying to work with the teams that are being under resourced at the moment. It's a good value proposition to try and just help them do less, and you know, we can do more on top, or we can help them with how they can do more with less if it's not us doing it themselves.
Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins. Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com.
Well, and before I don't want to leave the change discussion without asking, when you're working with clients, do you look for the I'll call it signs? The Heath brothers talk about the bright spots, and this idea of like who within the firm is exhibiting the target behavior or the mindset that are more likely to be, I'll call it, allies of what you're trying to do. And the way I position is like, we want to find the people that we don't want them to feel threatened that as an external party, their job is in jeopardy, or we want to make them successful, make them rock stars, and, you know, help them deliver on their objectives. I'm just wondering, like, do you take an approach of looking for those bright spots to, it's not so much self-serving to help your agenda, but to help them meet their goals?
Yeah, we do. Like in terms of, you know, when we're looking to partner with companies, you know, we do a lot of research into that, into the, you know, the right people and who's saying what on, you know, LinkedIn, what research can we do, things like that, and who do we need to speak to. But then also when we're starting to work with certain companies and certain teams and things like that, we'll always try and understand who else is in the department, who's been doing this kind of work before, you know, what's the full kind of stakeholder map look like, and then try and make sure that we just align with and speak to and you know, kind of collaborate with people, especially the ones that, as you said, perhaps might view like external support in a slightly more suspicious way. So yeah, we absolutely do our best to do that. I like what you say. Yeah, Chip and Dan Heath, some great books by those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the often overlooked. I remember on an engagement at the end of it, I asked the marketing communications team, I'm saying we're going to be leaving. Who owns this after we're gone? And it was the longest awkward pause because there was resistance to like, oh, if I own it, that means I'm accountable. And you know, there's some concerns there, but then there's others like, okay, in the absence of someone stepping up, you know, they'll step up.
Something that we have as well, something that I have to be aware of, is sometimes when people engage with us to work with us and they don't take maybe the full service offering that they have, because they'll, you know, they're trying to manage their budget and things like that. So they'll take all of the content creation, but they'll say, we don't need help with distribution because um, poor old overworked Bob over there is just going to distribute all the content instead.
We've got some good news for you, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's a funny thing because obviously in the politest way possible, you know, you have to kind of just talk through that and understand that there is going to be capacity, and if they're investing in us, and then the missing part of the overall offering is getting the content out and things like that, then, as happy as we are to take their investment in us and their money and their service, we don't want to create lots of great content and become a part of their organization, but then what we do doesn't, deliver the results that we want to deliver. We're seeing that things that we create isn't going out and things like that. So it's also, trying to work out, where you fit in, and if there's a dependency downstream, is that secure? Is that on board? Is that going to work? And as I said, kind of like trying to ensure that poor old Bob over there doesn't suddenly hate content 10x because we've just tripled his workload. So that, you have to just check these things, don't you? Like the downstream impact of are we just solving one problem and then creating a new problem?
No, I hear you, because we've faced situations where we're helping on one front, but we see the inevitable roadblock or impediment or impediments will arise in another area. Well, on the topic of webinars, the example I like to give is, you probably I don't know if you're familiar with Kate Chernis from Lately.
I know the platform, and I think I've met Kate at Content Marketing World, actually. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that what I like to highlight is they hold it's a webinar, but it's called Office Hours every Tuesday.
Right.
But they moved away from worrying about how many people showed up for the webinar. Many people would sign up to get the recording.
Yeah.
But they focused on, I describe it as, they made an appointment to make content every Tuesday at 1:00 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And it strikes me that, as you described, your approach to webinars was some kinds where you might do fewer, but focus on the substance and the quality and the caliber of the content. And in some cases, the audience live might not be as important as the overall audience that you led up to the webinar and in the weeks that followed. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think 100%, especially with live content, because only so many people are going to be able to turn up live. Firstly, not everybody wants to. Like, people have no interest in turning up to anything live. I'll be completely honest, I'm one of those people because I'm too impatient and I like to watch everything on 1.5 speed, so live is too slow.
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to fast forward and then realize it's live. You can't fast forward this. But at horses for courses, so to speak. So, like, not everybody wants to turn up live. Not everybody can they? So you've got different time zones. You've got people on vacation. People are at work. You might have chosen a middle of the daytime that suits some people, but not others. So there's going to be, in a subset of your audience, I'm pretty sure there's going to be more people outside of the subset of able to turn up live that you want to be reaching than the people able to turn up live. So I think that when you make an appointment with yourself and with people who can turn up live, well, it's great in two regards, because like you just said, you've made that appointment and you are going to create that content. Whether one person turns up or 500 people turn up, you are going to create that content and create it as if there are 500 people watching, because just think of the replay and all the people watching thereafter, and you have that content. And then I feel like from the live aspect, I do love it when people do things like live webinars and office hours, because it's not just content, it's an experience, because people can turn up, people can engage with you. It shows like trust and transparency. And if you open up for Q&A at the end, you show your expertise, don't you? You show that you can answer on the spot, and you're not just, a LinkedIn kind of like thought leader that might not even write your own post to begin with.
Yeah, you're not following a script either.
Exactly.
The Q&A, to your point,
yeah,
is
you're
live.
Going with the flow and showing that you can, and being honest if you can't answer and things like that. So, like, live is like content, create content and an experience on top, with lots of like icing on the cake for why the live aspect was worth it. But then at the same time, you've got to have that repurposing plan, because if it was just that moment in time where you went live, I'm just going to say like 15 people turned up or something, and you put so much effort into it, well, that would just be a waste if you did only do it to 15 people, wouldn't it? So that's why you've got to have the on-demand version afterwards. You've got to create the content afterwards. And I was talking to somebody on my podcast, and we were talking about repurposing webinars, and he'd just had like a great set of numbers where he was talking about through his live webinar, he had, I'm going to say 200 people turn up, but then through the watching of the replay and the repurposed content thereafter, it reached 20,000 people. And so it's, yeah, it keeps you accountable to create it, but you've got to think about about the content after as well.
Well, and you raised an interesting point about this idea of if you just had it, I'll call it the live moment, and that was all. There's so many examples, and I'm sure there's part of the reason you get engaged by clients is they were in the old habit of what I call one and done. We wrote a blog, we published it to the website, we shared it on LinkedIn once, and then we go set about making the next blog. And you kind of go, that social post was really expensive. For all the time and energy that went into it, and it's getting people away from that one and done and more to the into the frame of mind of every piece of content that you conceive of can have quite a long shelf life when thought about correctly.
Yeah, and I think that it's where you put your time, isn't it? And it all takes time. I mean, when we talk about repurposing a webinar, let's say, and we're saying, right, well, take the webinar, strip the audio and turn it into a podcast episode, and then edit it into clips. And then you've got 10 pieces of content for LinkedIn, and write some text only posts, pull out some quotages, and like 2 blog posts and things like that. It's not like all of that, like the repurposing fairy, just click the finger and all that happened just because the webinar existed. You still put in time into writing the blog post based on the webinar and clipping the videos based on the webinar. But I think it's just that you get more from that time because all of the original like insight and the thought process and the value that comes from the content is already in the existing content. So it's, you get more for your time extracting value from one piece than moving on to the next big piece and the next big piece, don't you? Like if you look at how do you measure value, and it's like reaching audiences, engaging with them, connecting with them, things like that. Like 10 hours on the webinar and then 10 hours on repurposing the webinar, you're just going to get more ROI than 10 hours on the webinar and then the other 10 hours on the next webinar, scrap the repurposing. So it's just being, I guess, kind of smart and efficient with maximizing something, isn't it? Really, it's all time, but it's just where you put the time.
It's like we said before, it's doing more with less.
Yeah.
But I recognize that people within an organization, to your point earlier about doing more with less, raises the hair on the back of the neck, like that, that puts their job in jeopardy. But with the rise of AI, everyone will be asked or expected to do more as part of their job description. But even in some cases, like some people are naturally gravitating to the incorporation of AI to do their job faster, more efficient, and actually just feel less pressure because they can do certain things in half the time or a fraction of the time, and then and potentially make themselves even more productive and more valuable as a result, and even less at risk of losing out to somebody else. I've talked about it before with Scott Rogerson from Up Content, the curation tool. And people, AI is not going to take it. The theory is AI won't take our jobs, but someone who knows how to use AI would be more of a threat. So
yeah, exactly. It's knowing how to use it, isn't it? It's knowing the right ways to use it in the most efficient ways and things like that. And I think in the world of like content, particularly creating B2B type content for marketing purposes, it's not, or like hopefully people don't necessarily use it to create the content. Like, well, certainly like we wouldn't it wouldn't be writing our content for us or anything like that, because I don't think it's in any way near a quality standard to be creating the content, but it can be helping with speeding up some of the mundane processes that wrap around the world of content creation, can't it? And working out how do you know, which processes can it speed up? It's going to be quicker at just trawling through a video and helping to pick out timestamps or something like that to pick out where the chapters change. But you wouldn't, hopefully, ask it to watch a video and write a blog post for you, because it's not good at writing, but perhaps it could assist with an outline or something like that. So it's just like, where's the efficient ways that you can use AI and still ensure that there's the quality standards. And you know, I agree with you, like when you were saying about people looking at how they can use it to become more productive and stay in employment, because, you know, we're the same as an agency. We're not we haven't really, I would say, embraced AI an awful lot so far. We talk about it quite a bit, but we've yet to find any tools that we've found particularly great for the work that we do. But we know that we will need to build more efficiency into our processes, because I was saying to the team the other day that, you know, I think we do need to be prepared over the next few years that we'll be serving more clients and spending less time on each client, because, you know, our competitors' prices will start coming down because they're spending less time as well, because they're introducing more AI. And so, you know, it might be that on average, if we spend 15 hours a week on certain clients, we'll need to build efficiencies in to spend 10 hours a week, but still balancing with the quality output and things like that. So where do we use it? But it's an interesting world, and as agencies, there's a lot of IP complexities with use of AI as well, which I'm very wary of and treading carefully with at the moment as well.
Well, we're in your camp in that. Do we use AI in our work, or more, shall we say, in our workflow? Absolutely. You know, to gain some advantages on, like to your point. Oh, can it summarize can it transcribe an episode? Great. Can it do timestamping? Can it help us organize some clips, things like that? I call that all derivative work. But like you, we do not trust authorship from scratch. Um, Having written a book myself, like you did, I wouldn't trust AI to now help me write a new. It might help me lay out some chapter ideas and ideation and, you know, conceiving some things, but ultimately the authorship, I still don't trust it yet. It's just and I probably never will.
No, I went to just like digression really briefly, but I went to a workshop last week with a legal company here in Manchester in the UK that were running a session about the legal aspects about AI for agencies and IP. And it was so interesting because, you know, they were talking about how, you know, the generative AI tools do absolutely no check that anything that they share with you isn't proprietary in any way. And so firstly, something could be spurted out from the tool that somebody could use to suddenly learn down the line that catchphrase or that saying or this or that is actually proprietary, and there was a trademark, patent, IP against it. AI does not know whether something's trademarked or not. Also, anything that you put into AI and anything it provides you with, it takes the rights of that. So even as an agency, if you put the transcript in of a client's podcast episode, when it reviewed that transcript to give you some highlights, it took ownership of that transcript as well. So that when it's serving other people asking questions, it will serve up your client's transcript as part of its response. It's really, there could be a whole entire episode on it, because but you know, you could put some client content in to ask it to look for something, and then 10 minutes later a person asks a question and it gives that person in another part of the world your client's transcript that you just put into it as the answer. It would do that. So
The waters get really muddy really fast.
they do, yeah. And you know, I guess it might sound like Content 10x isn't the most progressive, but like I must admit, we're not using much AI apart from trying to work out workflow efficiencies at the moment, not within the content generation side of things.
I gave a talk on AI recently. We do a social media listening and audience segmentation and things like that that incorporates AI. It's not the same as content, and so the part of what my stance was. There's a lot of AI going on in just the broader digital landscape that we take for granted, that we don't even think of it as AI. To be mindful of that. In the remaining few minutes that we have, I wanted to ask: um, has there been a situation where you were putting content together for a client that exceeded your expectations, but on the flip side, you had high hopes for and just didn't pan out? And I'm wondering what you can share on those in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely like situations, I'm sure you're exactly the same, where the content that you receive isn't
This
as
is going
high
to
up.
be great.
I think probably one of the funniest, and it's that many years ago that I think I can share it, is somebody who we worked with, and they were doing sort of thought leadership video content, but fairly new to video content. And it was more, well, it's two things. It was that the background in the videos was never thought through at all. And so there was like times where his bathroom was behind him with the bathroom door open, so you could just, he's like talking about, you know, really like complicated project management protocols, and you could see the toilet like right behind him, and like the sink and things like that, you know, just things like that where it was more just like you're saying really good things, but like we can't use the video because you needed to really think about the room that you were in and like things like that. But this was like really early days and things like that. I think another thing is where it was thought leaders in certain areas, but there was no kind of, I guess, strategy behind the content, so to speak. And so it just ends up becoming really sporadic, like the topics and things like that, like weekly shows where um, it's just not clear at all who you're talking to. And, you know, there's kind of just more overall, like bigger picture thinking of you're brilliant on camera and you're really engaging, but like last week it was about like tips on sleeping, and this week it's about getting the most out of a workforce or something. It's just a bit like, just like this isn't making sense, like strategy issues and things like that. But then, you know, on the flip side, and kind of going back years ago really when I was talking about that, because on the flip side, um you know, I'd say that we do get really like blown away with like really good content that we get to work with. And most recent example is we've worked on and off for years with Jay Bear, who, you know, a lot of people have heard of Jay Bear, but he used to run a company called Convince and Convert. He's a keynote speaker, and he speaks all over the world about customer experience and things like that. But he, in recent years, um, turned his passion for tequila into a business as well. And he's, in a very short space of time, become one of the world's leading experts on social media in tequila, on TikTok and Instagram. And we've just recently started working with him on his new podcast that's launching soon called The Spirit Guides, about people like him who've made a business out of their interest in spirits, be it rum, gin, whiskey, vodka, whatever it may be. And like Jay is just like the best like content creator. He's so good at creating quality content. We've worked with him for years back at Convince and Convert and other shows that he's done. There was one called Talk Triggers based on his book called Talk Triggers. And he's just one that like never, I guess, like he never fails to surprise us with his ideas and his content outputs. And what he does. He just knows what he's doing. Like,
He's a very generous individual. Has been very supportive of me. He gave a quote for my book jacket, and when I first I was well aware of him, but he was in Toronto speaking at the Uberflips content con, and we were talking at an after party, and he's, for those who listening who don't know who he is, as a keynote speaker, one of the more noteworthy things about him is the suits that he wears. And I have a background in menswear, so I said, Jay, I got to ask you, where do you get your suits? And he goes, he lives in Indiana, and he said there's a tailor he goes to, and he said my ask is always the weirder the better.
well, you know what? What's really funny? I can't remember if he still has it on his site or not, because I just can't remember. But it used to be the case, because that's a signature thing for him, isn't it? Those plaid like suits that he wears, and it used to be the case that when you book Jay to keynote at your event, you could choose what outfit he would wear, and I loved it. It's just classic Jay. Like Build a Bear, like I think that's international, isn't it? Those kids shops in malls and stuff. You go and build your teddy bear. Well, I think he played off that and called it like Dress a Bear or something. Obviously, Bear spelt his last name Jay Bear, and he worked with someone on his site, and it was so cool because you could choose the plate that he'd wear and stuff. And then when
Like those cardboard where you
yeah,
could
yeah,
change
yeah.
the outfit.
It was so good, and you could dress Jay, like you could choose his suit. I can't. He's had his website designed a few different times since we started working with him. I hope he kept it. But yeah, it's so funny.
Well, I'm sure we both agree in that encouraging people to check out his books.
Yeah, brilliant
Um,
books.
and
Mm.
one of the things, one of the phrases he said that resonated with me, and I continue to share with people, is, well, sort of two parts about content. Is your content so good that people would pay for it, and also that your content should really be the best answer to the questions that you anticipate your audience is asking. So, um, a little shout out to Jay.
Yeah, big shout out.
Well, and the last thing I wanted to ask you, with an eye to the future, I guess, sort of like, what are you paying attention to in the content marketing space? And kind of what are you paying attention to? And I guess related to that, what advice would you give to content marketers that they should be thinking about?
I guess, well, we just touched on it in terms of we're paying attention to AI in terms of just working out how other people are using it, how best to leverage it ourselves, and also just the broader implications of it within content creation, content marketing, and things like that. So, but we've already talked about that, and I think we're at the moment for us, the majority of our clients from a non-owned platform perspective are focusing on focus on LinkedIn mainly, so as their kind of social platform. And at the moment, at least for this quarter, we're focusing a lot on making sure that we're staying up to date with the key changes that are happening over on LinkedIn, and in particular there's a real move towards video focus on LinkedIn. And I'm not sure if you've heard, because it hasn't rolled out to me because it's in beta, so only a few people have it. But maybe you've seen
The
this vertical.
TikTokification of
Yeah, this
LinkedIn.
TikTok. I've only seen screenshots of it, but I haven't seen it myself on my phone.
Same.
Mm.
It tends to be US first, and the other thing that they announced last week is the premium pages, where there'll
Yes,
be a paid
exactly.
for page.
Yeah, it's
Um,
interesting, isn't it? And so we're really trying to, I know this is obviously a really specific answer, but we're trying to just make sure that we're keeping, kind of really up to date on this, because it's where most of our clients and ourselves actually focus from a social perspective. And because we do deal with quite a lot of video content as well, we're trying to just make sure that if clients are interested, and if we're obviously interested too, that we know what's going on with the vertical side, and that we can look back and see if we can help some clients get a bit of a head start as that rolls out with vertical video content. I'll be interesting to see how that goes though, because like LinkedIn Lives, they really tried to push that, didn't they? Like really tried. And it never quite became what they wanted it to become.
Yeah.
And we've
Well, they
seen a
tried
few.
stories too, and it didn't take
Oh,
off.
that didn't take. That came and went, didn't it? So I'm sure. So one of those things, isn't it, where you want to be aware, but you don't want to be the people. You don't want to like just say let's let's go all in on this like clubhouse bit, like in the pandemic. Everyone suddenly like doing a clubhouse course and things like that. But just there just seems to be changes, and I would just say as a recommendation, the the link there's the 2024 LinkedIn algorithm report. I think, I wish I should have brought his name here before I start this episode. Richard van der
Yeah,
Beek, is it?
Vanderblom.
Yeah. And you can find it anyway, even if you just Google LinkedIn algorithm report, I'm sure you find it. Just really recommend that as well, because it's so useful in terms of we've been paying attention to that and just looking at what's working, the changes, and preparing for a bit more of a video focus on the platform is really what we're looking at the moment.
Well, and the power of commenting. But on
Exactly.
that, the potential emergence of this, I'll call it TikTok style video, leads me to, I guess, well, I want to respect your time. This will be the last question.
Yeah, no worries.
But this idea of, and I come from a film and television background, but I've been talking to folks about this idea of, especially using TikTok as an example, that people will forgive production value for authenticity and accessibility. And if LinkedIn's going to be pushing this TikTok style video type content, I'm wondering if there'll be an appetite for lower production value for the sake of speed. And um, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I think that there became a lot more tolerance anyway for lower production value as we went through the pandemic generally, because people are suddenly um, just used to seeing. I mean, let's face it, even Ellen was doing a show from like her like her living room or kitchen. Or it was mad, wasn't it? Like we were
Yeah,
seeing
talk
the
shows were on
biggest.
Zoom now.
Yeah, exactly. We were seeing like the biggest, highest production shows, even never mind content on for businesses and stuff, going down to a lowish production value, and we became more tolerant of that, and of like suddenly people's who'd never worked from home, suddenly we are seeing like they're in the home office and things like that, and then I feel like people have been more forgiving ever since, particularly of the thought leadership style content. I'm not talking about like big brands doing promo videos and stuff like that, but more the kind of the everyday content and the thought leadership content. So I think that in bringing that and trying to embrace that, it's like they're saying that they do think that the audience is ready for that. Though you raise a really good point that stories came and went in a heartbeat, didn't it? Because that wasn't really working and people weren't really embracing it. But they obviously think it's time for this. But the kind of content that does really well though on TikTok and Instagram Reels, which you can almost just call them one and the same, can't you? Because it's pretty much the same things that trend on both.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
the
what's on
kind of.
TikTok ends up on a reel in two
Yeah,
weeks on
exactly. And it's
Instagram.
probably the one like place where, I'm all for saying like that. I don't necessarily think that you should just cut and paste one thing from one platform to another, but I always make the exception that if you put it on TikTok, you can put it on Instagram Reels. But I don't. I think it'd be interesting to see if people just think that that kind of content will do so well on LinkedIn, because I don't think that will, like that, that style of content. I think it needs to find its own way, doesn't it? But people are going to have to try and create pretty interesting content, because it'll be quite boring if people are just scrolling through, just talking head thought leadership videos and clips from podcasts and things like that. Like, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, won't we? But
We'll see if what the impact of if the TikTok ban goes through as well.
I know. Well, that's an interesting one as well, isn't it? I don't know how to call that either.
Well, it will mitigate its influence.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so
Yeah, we'll
we
see.
shall see.
Mm.
Fingers crossed. I'm hopeful that it's saved. I love it. I love it for its content. but
Me too. We'll see.
it's
Yeah.
out of my hands. So we shall see. Listen, I want to thank you so much for your time and everything you shared. It was great to finally connect, albeit virtually, but having listened to you on a number of other podcasts. I promise to pick up a copy of your book too.
Oh yeah, thank you. I'll send you it. I'll be in touch
I'll
with
send you mine then.
Yeah,
So,
let's do a book swap. That sounds great.
sounds perfect. And hopefully, the next time you're in Canada, that we can connect. But
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's truly appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.